All right. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own AI powered inbox manager for your cold email campaigns. So what I have here is the system that we have in place, which we use to categorize, reply, and manage all of our cold emails that we send via Smart Lead. So this here is an example which I'm going to use in this video. And the whole point of this is to show you exactly what you can do with the power of just a few tools. So I'm going to run this again, just so that you know as well. If you see me in here running this, it's because I don't want to set up a whole new campaign just so that I can get a bunch of these and do it over and over and over again. I'm using a tool called RecBin, which is just an API testing tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text, and I'm going to determine exactly what happens through every single branch of this automation. So the first thing I want to do is just click run, and then I'm going to show you what happens when someone responds that they are not interested right now. Thanks for the message, but I'm not interested right now. Send, and then we'll see how this goes. So right now it's finding the individual, finding the lead, going into a Google document, which is going to power this rough sentiment analysis. The sentiment analysis has gone back and found that the individual is not interested, and it has now changed this lead category. So if I refresh the page, it will show me that the individual is not interested. So then let's try another one. Let's try the out of office response. So let's say something like this. Hey, I'm out of office at the moment. I'll be back on the 30th of July. Let me run this one again and then click send. And it's doing the same thing. It's finding the information, and then it's found out that the individual is out of office. What it has now done, it is changed the individual from not interested now to out of office. What it's also done is it's decided to find when the individual will be back, and it has determined how many days from now the individual will be back in office, and that is 3 days from now. And this step here will resume the lead in 3 days. Right now it's come back as a 409 simply because this is the end of the campaign, so there isn't anything to resume. But if say for example someone sends a message saying, hey, I'm not in office, I'll be back in 9 days, it will correctly identify that it will be 9 days from now, upon which the email will then be sent to continue the rest of the campaign. So let's try another example. Let's try wrong person. Shani no longer works at this company. If you want to get in contact with someone about something specific, please email shenimailinglists@gmail.com. So if we send this one off, we will determine that the individual is the wrong person. And what we've now done is we have found the other email that is inside of the text. And what we've also done is change the lead category to wrong person and forwarded the email chain to the individual that we highlighted, that was highlighted in that email. So that's wrong person. And then if we say, for example, someone is requesting a meeting, we can do the following. So let's go in and change this text now and say something a little different. When can we talk over the phone about this? I'm free on Monday morning. Let's click run, and then we'll click send. And then what it's going to do is it's now going to determine that the individual is requesting a meeting. And in doing so, we've changed the lead category. We found our introductory call calendar, which is, just a discovery call calendar, which is on my landing page, which if we scroll all the way down, we'll be able to find right here when it loads. And then what it's also done is it's gotten the list of times and it's sent a message into Slack. And the message will contain the individual times that the person is going to be available. And as you can see, so-and-so has just sent in a meeting request. These are the available times. And we've got two different time zones as well here. So 29th of July, 2024, 11 to 11:30, 11 till 1 on the 30th, and 3 till 3:30 on the 30th. And if we go back here and we have a look at the calendar, we can see 11 till 11:30 right here, and we can see 11 until 1 and then 3 until 3:30 as correctly identified over here. So that's what happens when there is a meeting request. Now, let's say someone says something completely different, which cannot be categorized. If we go in here, let's change the messaging and see what happens. What's the price? I only work on performance. Let's say we then send this off. We can now see that it has gone down this route, and this route has sent a Slack message, and the Slack message has something that is really, really key, which is really important to, have inside of your system, which has been an absolute life changer, because we can see that this individual has replied. The individual reply is inside of here. This is what the reply said. What's the price? I only work on performance. And we also have this little Slack button. Is this a lead worth following up with? So if we click qualified, we get a message back saying so-and-so marked as qualified, check close for further actions. And what that's done is it has triggered this automation. And this automation happens when a qualified email reply is determined or not determined. In this situation, the individual was determined, and what's happened is we've taken the individual and we've gotten that message, we've created the qualified message, and then we've searched for the lead inside of our CRM in Close, and then we've created a task for them inside of Close. And this task is as simple as call so-and-so or insert this person and add it to this campaign. So if we then decide to do the unqualified route, then we'll see exactly what happens here. If we do where are we gone? Right over here. So if I click unqualified, marked as unqualified, configuring the lead category now, this individual will now be categorized as unqualified. So you can see how this whole system works, and you can see the benefit in this whole system in the sense that if a response comes through that does not need to be looked at because they're not interested, they're out of office, or they are, the wrong person, or it's a do not contact, then what ends up happening is they don't see the Slack channel. And this Slack channel is where every single email will go through. There is not a single email that needs to be managed, which will not appear in here. And this will always send them back to the master inbox to find who the individual is that responded. And then they could therefore just create the response based on, what needs to be done there. The benefit of this as well is that a lot of the times when someone responds, you can find the information from, let's say, their website, click on their website, have a look around, and based on your offer, you can determine if the individual is qualified or not. And you can also determine from the individual that's responded, who, if you've put the people in the campaign correctly, are they a decision maker? Are they not a decision maker? If they're not a decision maker or the company is bad, you can just mark them as unqualified and then change their lead category. And then they will also be changed in here, which means that when you're going through and you're creating certain views or you're trying to clean up your inbox, you can simply filter out all of these messages because they've been managed in Slack or they've been managed somewhere else. So this whole system, including these two automations here, have basically cut inbox management by 80 to 90% of the time that it was taking. And just so that you know, there's a little bit of background that you need to know in order to be able to make something like this or something similar for, a larger organization. So I'm going to get into that now. All right. So here's a little bit of background on the AI powered inbox manager. So cold email to this day is still the most easily scalable form of outbound marketing. And honestly, if you're not doing cold email and you have no intention of starting, then this video just simply isn't for you. But if you are, and you're spending 8 hours a day locked inside of your sending platform because you're just looking for leads to respond to, you're likely spending a ton of time waiting for replies. In this document, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover this system and the background of the system, which cuts my time spent in the inbox by literally 80 to 90%. And this is for you if you send cold emails to at least 2,000 prospects a month, usually more than that, for this to be really, really effective. You have an SDR team that's spending all of their time watching the inbox for the cold email campaigns that they would have put out because they need speed to lead, and they're prioritizing cold email replies over other valuable touch points like cold calls and LinkedIn connection requests, for example. Or you do cold outreach on behalf of other businesses and your inbox management team is spending more time categorizing replies and actually replying to the leads themselves. So just as a quick background, for those that don't know, me and my business partner ran a cold email lead generation agency, or cold email lead generation as a service in some way, shape or form, since December 2020 until around April 2024. And in this time, we sent emails to over 1 million prospects. We booked 45 calls in 40 days for our own offer. We booked 33 calls in 60 days for a professional development company via cold email. And we helped their small SDR team go from 4 calls booked a month to 73 calls booked in 1 month, in our highest month. We also helped a marketing agency go from 50 to 90k MRR in about 7 months through the leads that we brought them. Eventually, then taking our systems that we implemented in-house and scaling to over 200k MRR and then getting acquired. We also booked about 4 to 10 calls per month for about 75% of our clients, which is actually the most impressive one here, simply because there are a lot of clients that have really bad offers, and making a really bad offer work via cold outreach is not the easiest thing in the world. In fact, sometimes it's nigh on impossible. So the ability to actually book a call a week for certain individuals, and when I say certain individuals, I mean people who are in the reddest of oceans, is actually quite the feat. And we booked qualified calls with companies like Fidelity Life and Adobe for our clients. The systems that we had in place allowed us to run all of these campaigns with just 4 members of staff. So it was just me, my business partner who was doing copy and sales, 1 inbox manager and 1 campaign manager that was managing our smart lead, that was importing leads into our campaigns, that was managing a lot of the tech, that helped out with a lot of the automations, and helped out with all of the domains and setting up the inboxes as well. 4 people, that's all we needed. And the most important automation we used was centered around replies. So just as an example of the difficulties of inbox management, it's getting very, very hard to send cold outreach en masse because of the increasing number of hurdles that someone needs to get past before you can actually get a call booked in. And the first one, which is the main one that's been affecting a lot of my friends as well, is deliverability. Getting past Google and Microsoft spam filters right now is getting harder and harder. People are clocking onto inbox rotation. Things are just not as easy as they were 2 to 3 years ago. And the worst part about this is that people have started to filter cold emails from their inbox entirely. There's been a number of people who, as cold email agencies, have sent emails with the subject line, quick question. Whenever quick question is now inside of a subject line, if you haven't got that as a spam filter, then you're basically you're clogging your inbox with emails that you probably don't want to read, unless you're obviously in the market for something that someone would then offer you for their services. Then there's out of office replies. People have autoresponders on all the time. People have autoresponders on, for example, and I got this the other day. Hey, sorry, I'm not in office. I'll be back in office end of June. It is the end of July and you still have this autoresponder on. So getting past that in and of itself is one of the other obstacles that are going to decrease the amount of leads that you can drive over time. And then on top of that, you have the useless replies. You have people sending cold emails to the wrong person, people who say, don't email me again. And especially with the do not contact ones in certain countries, like if you're sending to DACH, this can lead to fines or having to sign documents to say that you will not email them again, or else we'll pay XYZ fine for, getting over, data and privacy laws. And then we have the useful and positive replies, which are a little bit better, but they're still not 100%. Any of the replies that insinuates any level of interest, whether that be questions requesting for further information, like, can you tell me more about your service? Or what's the price? Or I only work on performance. Do you have a trial offer? Any of these things. These are the useful and positive replies that actually need to be managed. There's still a fair amount of drop off here, as you've seen from the automation, in the sense that there are a number of people who will give you this, but when you have a proper look at their website and who they are as a company, you find out that they're not really qualified and they're not really worth your time and they're not worth responding back to. So you would just want to leave them alone and you want to process in order to get that sorted. And then there's booked calls, which is the actual goal of the entire cold email system, which is to book a sales call with a prospect. And the only blockers to a sale at this point is the show up rate, qualification rate, and your ability to close the deal. So there's a lot of wasted effort. There's a ton of wasted effort. So if you're in the inbox 24/7 waiting for a positive reply, you'll be spending 90% of your time dealing with steps 1 to 3, dealing with the deliverability problems, out of office replies, and the useless replies. That is 80 to 70% of most cold email responses nowadays. The problem isn't the funnel. that's just part of the game, and you just have to adapt. If you haven't been sending cold emails because cold email is hard and I don't know how to do it, or I keep on getting out of office replies, get better. Simply, it's a skill issue. Just get better. The problem is actually the time spent on the funnel itself. So we want to be able to free up the time of the individual who is in charge of outbound so that they can focus on the other touch points. And this is where this very, very important system comes into play. If you could accurately determine the sentiment of a reply, you can respond to the relevant prospects the moment they appear in your funnel. And to do this, you'll need a specific system, which is the system that we've outlined. And here are the most important things that you need in place in order to accurately run inbox management for your cold email campaigns. One, you need a cold email sending platform. I swear by SmartLead. SmartLead is the best on the market by a long shot. And not only that, and just for my, for my tendencies to automate everything, yes, it has the best API in the game, but it's also one of the most product-led. It's one of the best products on the market, just in general when it comes to marketing SaaS. And the owner, V, is very, very, very in touch with all the individuals that come through, and they have a massive community around sending cold emails and the best ways to do so. So they're really and truly just ahead of the game in that sense. You also need a way to pass emails. You need a selective notification system, which is also powered by AI. And then you also need a way to manage each and every form of reply. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is I'm basically going to build this from scratch and explain my steps along the way. All right, so there's a few things that we are going to need before we start. And the first thing we need is a SmartLead account, which is, the main thing that we're operating a lot of this out of. And we're also going to need a webhook and an API key from SmartLead. So I'm going to use the ones that I've already created. The only things I'm going to do is I'm going to change out the webhook here with a new webhook that gets made in Make. So the first thing you want to do is you want to set up a new webhook, and this here is going to be webhooks. Then we're going to go into custom webhook. I'm going to make a new one. So I'm going to call it new reply test workflow. I'm going to click save. I'm going to copy the address to the clipboard, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this one. So with the webhooks inside of SmartLead is very, very simple. It's just the webhook name, the webhook URL, which I'm going to just change for this one. And then you have an association type. So you can create webhooks for individual campaigns, you can create them for individual clients, or you can create them for individual users, which applies to all unmapped campaigns. But we're going to stick to client, and we're going to use this client here, the Icarus Growth one, which is where the previous campaign had come from. And we're going to link this to email reply. And what we're going to do now as well is we're going to, so this is already going, we already have that there trying to determine the structure, but I'm actually just going to click OK and then run this once. And from there, I'm going to send a test to this webhook, and it should spit out everything that we're going to play with right now. So inside of here, if I zoom in a tiny bit, we have the webhook name, we have, stats ID, we have the from email. So this is the individual email that sent the email that a reply was received to. We have a to email. We have the name of the individual that was sent to. And inside of reply message, we have the text that was sent. We also have a campaign ID, we have a client ID, and we have a email ID, and we have the, where's it gone again? There was another one which is also going to be used, which we'll get to when we get to it. So most of the information that we're going to need is going to come from here. So the first step is to get a webhook and to just push the information to the webhook. This information is the same information that we can use to set up the rest of it. Beforehand, it wasn't, because they used to send a body to the webhook, which wasn't the same body that came out when a campaign had started. But either way, all of the names and all of the key value pairs are basically the same, so we can go from here. So the next step is to fetch a lead, and for that we need a HTTP request. So we're going to go in here, click HTTP request, and then we're going to do make a request. Now all of this information is information that we can get from the SmartLead API, the API reference, which is this one here, and we just want to fetch a lead by their email address. So if we go down here and we find Fetch email by email address. I've gone blind. Let me just search for it. Fetch lead by email address. Perfect. We need this endpoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this here. It's going to give us everything that we would need. So if we go in here, click on URL, and then we now have the URL that we would need. We have server.smartlead.ai/API/v1 leads !API key equals blank and email equals blank. So I'm going to stick the email, and it is a to email. I'm going to stick that in here. And the API key is what we will find if, let me update this. Let me not mess that one up. What we will find if we go back into our profile and we just take this API key, which is over here. So I'm going to take that, and then I'm going to put that equals here, and then and ampersand email equals this. And then the method is going to be a get request. The headers is going to be content type application /JSON. Now, body is raw. In fact, we don't need a body for this one, so I'm going to leave this one empty, and we're going to pass the response. Now, it's not going to get me anything because there isn't an individual. But in fact, before I do that, let me go back into RecBin and take the example that I took from the previous, so that we have something that we can work from. Okay, so I went into RecBin, which is the REST and API tool, which we're going to use to just fire off a bunch of examples. And I'm going to paste the information from the previous step. And I'm also going to put our webhook in here. So I'm going to copy this address to the clipboard and paste. Now, if you are wondering how to even get that for yourself, if you just go back and you look at the history, in fact, if I just run this from the webhooks inside of SmartLead again, if I go in here and then send a test to this webhook, then it should do that. I'll just save it. And now we have, if we click on the history, we can open up this. And when we open up this, if we go up here and we click on download output bundles, we can take this entire thing here and then copy it and paste it into here. And that is going to give us everything for whenever we want to set this off over and over and over again, because it's basically just sending another webhook response to the webhook that we have in Make. The thing is, you can't actually get this same response unless you have a campaign that is actively churning out replies. So in order to build this and be able to double check it and fact check it, etc., we want to get the output bundle from the example. So that's how I've just gone and got this information. I've also put this in here. So if I go in and now run it one more time and click on send, we now have a 200 response, and we now have the individual information from the person. This fetch request is now complete. So remember, it was the fetch lead by email address endpoint with the API key as well as the email, get request, content type application JSON, so on and so on and so on. So we now have, let's just rename this fetch lead by email. Cool. So we now have the lead by email address, and Make has done that very annoying thing where it has duplicated the structure. So if I go back and fix this now, so now we have the webhook and we have the lead. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us the information that was imported from wherever we got the leads from. So whether it be Apollo, ListKit, or, you know, Casper, whatever the software was where we got the information, downloaded the CSV and then plugged it into SmartLead to start the campaign. Fetch lead will get us all of the information from the actual lead when it was imported, including phone numbers, emails, company names, websites, and other custom fields included. So we have a LinkedIn URL here as well that we can use. So the next step is to go in and make another request, and this is going to be to get all of our lead categories. So we need the fetch lead categories endpoint. So I'm going to copy all of this and then do the exact same thing. API key equals the API key inside of SmartLead. So go here, copy this and paste it. And this is another get request. Click OK and rename it to fetch lead categories. And then if we run it one more time, click here, and then go back in. We now have all of the lead categories that belong to the system. What we didn't do is we forgot to click on past response. So let's do this again, and then we'll be able to use, it will pass the JSON, and now we can click on the individual lead categories. So we have meeting request here, interested, not interested, do not contact, information request, out of office, wrong person, and I believe follow up, unqualified. So everything, the first 7 are all of the default ones inside of Smart Lead. In order to complete this, what you would need is you would need to create a lead category called unqualified. So you would just go up here, add new category, call it unqualified or bad lead or whatever it may be. Change the sentiment to whatever it would be. This one here is, you know, not positive, and then you just create it. And then whenever you fetch it, it will create a new ID for this, and it will add it to the collections, and then you can get it from there. So we now have the leads, and we now have the lead categories. And now what we need to do is get the content of a document inside of Google Docs. So if I go in and grab a Google Doc list, get the content, and then click on the connection that you have, what we need is a document that looks like this. So what this document is doing is it's basically a dynamic prompt, and I put it in here because this prompt needed a lot of work over a lot of time, and what we needed to do is we needed to determine what each individual lead category is, what it means, and the reasons as to why we would have them as we would have them. So this one here, response handler prompts, I've just got this here, so you can just copy this text real quickly as we go down, and I have 2 prompts here as well. So I have a user prompt and I have a system prompt. The system prompt is the first part of the ChatGPT, and the user prompt is the second part. This is just telling them what all of the categories are. You know, you are a response handling expert that excels at categorizing the reply text of an email into different lead categories based on the content of the email reply. And then the next part is pick the most relevant lead category from your list of available categories. And we have an order of importance here as well. And all of this is just over time what I've, you know, pieced together as the most important order of what needs to be categorized. So once we have all of these, we can then just take the document ID, which is everything after the /document/D/, and everything before the /edit. So if we take this here, and then we get the document ID and we just slap it in there and we click OK, and we just call it get prompts. We can run this, and then we go back into here, and then what it's going to do is it's going to just spit out the entire Google document as text content. Now I've got the headings in this style here, #$ because the next step is going to be a regex step. And for this, what we want to do is open up the text parser, and then we want to match pattern. So this is looking for a regular expression, and what we want is a global match because we don't want to stop when it finds the first match. And we want to continue the execution of the route even if the emoji finds no matches. We can leave that on as yes. And then the text is going to be the text content. Now, this regular expression is not something I'm getting myself. I'm getting ChatGPT to make it for me. So I've done this before, but what I'm going to do is just do the actual, I'm just going to do the whole thing again. Cool. I have the following string of text that I want to isolate. Here is the regular expression. Here's the text. I want to extract this using regex. What's the regular expression for this? So this is actually different to what I've had before. So we'll copy it, but if this doesn't work, I'm just going to grab the one that I used beforehand. So I'm going to stick this directly into make, and then I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to run this one more time. So we'll just click run anyway, go back in here, click on send, and then we'll see if this flopped or not. Yep, it flopped. All right, I'm going to grab the one that I've done before. All right, so this is the one that I have. So, you know, have a look at this and put this one in directly. You can actually test regex online. I think it's called regex 101. And this here, you would just put the test, you just put the string that you have made up, and then you would take your text and then you'd also paste it in here, and it will determine if it has found something or not. And right now it's saying no match because this is using the dollar signs instead of, it's using the pound sign instead of the dollar signs. But either way, it should work. It should work either way. So let's stick this one in and then let's run it and go back in here and then click send. And now what it spit out is 2 bundles. Bundle I, which is 1, which is the response handler system. So this is the URL response handling expert, and then bundle 2, which is response handler user, and that says pick the most relevant lead category from your list of available categories. So now we have 2 bundles, which means that we can now put these into ChatGPT. But before we do that, we need to turn the 2 bundles into one with an array aggregator. So what we'll do here is click on this. The source module is the text parser, and then we'll take 1, 2, and 3, and then click OK. And then what should happen if we run it is it should cram all of those 2 bundles into one bundle. So we click on send, and this is now giving us an array with number 1 bundle being response handler system and number 2 being response handler user. Great. So this is the front end of the entire automation, and this is basically getting 1, the information from the lead, 2, the lead categories that are currently inside of Smart Lead, 3, our prompts, and 4, splitting up the prompts so that we can use them moving forwards. So the next part here is going to be where we involve ChatGPT. So for this point here, what we're going to do is we're going to open up a ChatGPT module and create a completion. Click on our account. We're going to create a chat completion and use GPT-4o, and then we're going to add 2 messages. The first message is a system and the second message is a user. And the only thing we want to do is we want to take this array. But what we want to do is we want to get the user, prompt for the user part, and we want to get the system prompt for the system part. So what we need is to map. So map is very simple. It's inside of this array. Give me 2, where 1 equals response handler system, and then we want to copy this and then we want to paste this here and then change this one to user, and then right at the end we want to put the email copy that came from the sent message text. So this is basically going to say you are a response handling expert that does blah 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 blah. Find the X, Y, and Z of this response of this message here, and it's going to take this sent message text here. Max tokens will put a 0, and then we'll go into the advanced settings, and then we'll change the temperature to 0.1, and we'll change top P to 0.1 just to remove any kind of variability. I'll leave the rest of it alone for now and just click on OK. And what should happen is it should run a completion, which is going to take this text, and the sent message text in this example is, or reply message. Oh, I put sent message text, didn't I? I meant to put reply message text. So it's reply. So it's reply message text right here. So reply message text goes in here. And what we're going to do is, since it says what's the price, it should come up with something like other or not recognized. Just going to go through here, get the prompts, pass them, and then we now have inside of here a completion which says information request. So information request is one of the other lead categories which we're not actually using inside of this system, because we're basically using this system to remove all of the ones that we don't want to look at or deal with the ones that we want to look at. So information request is what is spat out. Information request is not going to be one of the ones that we actually build into this, but we are going to continue by building what needs to be built. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create like 5 of these, and just so that I know what I'm working with, I'm going to put this as not interested. I'm going to put this as do not contact, and then I'm going to work my way through the rest of these in the order that we have here. So I'm just going to pause and do that. Cool. So I have my examples here: not interested, do not contact, out of office, wrong person, meeting request, and fallback. And in fallback, what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to set this to yes. So this route will be set as a fallback, which is the backup route, which is used when the source data doesn't go through any of the other routes. So I'm going to leave that there as fallback. And then I'm going to put the requisite filters on each of these. So remember, we got all of the lead categories. So we just need to map a bunch of lead categories now. So where I basically want to put this data name is or contains case insensitive, not interested. And then we'll have that there. In fact, what we want is not this. We want the response from ChatGPT. So let me go back in here. Choices, message, content, contains, not interested. So that's the first one. Then we want the exact same thing. So I'm going to just copy this for all of them. So this one here is do not contact. So this one, case insensitive, contains, do not contact. Out of office as well, paste that back in here. Case insensitive, contains, out of office. Then we have wrong person, case insensitive. And then we have meeting request down here, paste that in here. Meeting request, case insensitive. And then fallback route we can leave alone. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to change the lead category whenever someone is marked as not interested. So this part here is just us doing the exact same thing for each of these. So it's one HTTP module, which is a make a request. And this request, if we go back into smart lead, is to change lead category. So I'm just going to search category, update a leads category based on their campaign. And then what we want to do is we want to copy this, because this is the endpoint. It's asking for the campaign ID, it's asking for the lead ID, and it's asking for the API key. It's also asking for the category ID and to pause the lead. So if I take that information, I go back in here, because this is going to be a post request, which is raw content type JSON. Request content is going to be a lot of this. So I'm going to take this URL, cut it and paste it up here, and we'll deal with that in a second. The data, I'll remove that, and then I'll keep category ID here, pause lead, true, and just delete that. So we now have this, which we're going to end up copy and pasting once we have these put in place. But first, let me deal with this. We need a campaign ID and a lead ID and our API key. So if the campaign ID, I'm going to click right inside of this gap here. I'm going to get the campaign. So the campaign ID is in two places, right? One thing, it's the best thing that you can do is take the campaign ID from here, or basically either take the campaign IDs from the same place, or take the campaign ID from the first step. So I'm going to try and see if I can get everything from the first step. So I'm going to put campaign ID here, and then leads in another one. So I'm going to put lead SL email lead ID. So we have under here, where's it again? Leads / lead ID / category. And I need to double check that that's the same, because I think I might have deleted something I didn't need to delete there. Campaigns / campaign ID leads / lead ID category. Campaigns / campaign ID leads / lead ID category. Perfect. And then we need our API key. On our API key, if we go back in here to our profile, we can grab from here, paste that there, and now we have the post. And we now need to deal with the categories. So the categories that we want are going to come from the fetch categories step, which should have triggered, which we can't actually see in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to run this one more time, and it should pop up irrespective of whatever error we get. All right, so let me go in and go back up here and grab. If I collapse all again, I can see the lead categories down here. We now need to grab this whole array and we need to map it. So let's go map. Inside of this array, find the ID. Oh, find ID. Raw file name is still ID. Yep. semicolon, where name is not interested. Close. Pause lead true. And then we want to pass the response. So now, if we go back inside of here and then we go into reply message text and I put not interested, it should flag as not interested. So I'm going to click on this, run, and then send, and then we'll look and see if there are any problems. So I went through there, status code 200, okay, true, perfect. All right. So now we know that this configuration is correct. We can then go in fact, let me actually check the actual campaign, the master inbox. Not interested, perfect. All right. So what we can do now is we're going to copy and paste this exact same request onto all of these. And then what we're going to do from there is change the mapping so that each individual category spins out. I'm also going to need to change the filtering. That's the fallback, so I don't need it for the fallback. So we'll delete it for that one. I'm going to need to change this filter and basically just delete all of the filters that came from the copy and paste job. So click that and click next. Click that and click next. Click that and click OK. So now we need to match the branch to the actual mapping. So this one here is the do not contact. So we need to change this to do not contact. Yep, that's there. And this one we need to change to out of office. And I need to confirm that out of office doesn't have a lowercase o because the map is an identical matching. So if they're going back into lead categories, out of office, all caps. Nice. So that's out of office. Then we need wrong person. So we change this and change it to wrong person. And then we need meeting request. Oh, that one was there. So we need to delete that. And this one here, we change to meeting request. And then if we just delete these parts here, we should have a cleaner setup. And that will allow us to do everything that we would need. All right, so let me just change this again one more time. I'll just do it for I am out of office until 3rd of August. If we go back in here, click auto align, run it once, click send, and then it should go down the out of office 200, okay, true. And then if we go back to the master inbox, we should be able to see out of office. Perfect. All right. So out of office works. And then, you know, the rest of these would need to be tested as well. Cool. So we've got all of the lead categories changing when ChatGPT is picking up that the individual is out of office. All right. So not interested is done. Do not contact now needs to be created. This branch here. Now, what we need to do when someone has requested that you remove the information from your campaigns is to honor that request by unsubscribing them and then adding them to the global block list. So that's 2 extra steps, which are 2 more HTTP requests. So the first one is going to be the unsubscribe lead from all campaigns and prevents them from being added to any future campaigns. I think this adds, okay, so I believe, yeah, so we'll do both of these, right? So unsubscribe lead from all campaigns and then add lead to the global block list. So I'm going to copy this side again, the request over here, go back in here and paste it, remove the curl. And then from the leads, I want the lead ID from the first step. So SL email lead ID came through right here, / unsubscribe, !, API key equals blank. So I keep on going back and forth to get this API key. I'm just going to save it into like my notepad or something like that. But let me just click on copy and paste that here. That is a post request. Is there any other information that needs to be sent? Nope, because all we need is a lead ID and the API key and there's no data that goes with it. So this step should be complete. So we'll just click on OK. And in fact, let me on here rename this to unsub from all campaigns. and click OK. I'm going to test this part last simply because once I do this, it's going to be an eyesore just trying to remove the individual person from Smart Lead in and of itself. So we'll test this one later, but this one should be made pretty easily because it's a bunch of very simple HTTP requests. So we have the unsub from all campaigns. We now need to add the lead/domain to the global block list. So I'm going to copy this and go back into here. And it's going to spit out a bunch of other stuff. So there's some data here which we're going to need for later. So we're going to type body type raw, content type JSON, request content goes down here. And then we're going to take this information here and we're going to add domain block list question mark API key equals blank. So we're going to get the API key again. server.smartlead.ai/API leads, add domain block list. And I believe we would need to take this information here to determine who gets blocked. So just by reading this, I can tell that in the domain block list, you can either block you can block an email or a whole domain, and which is the reason why it's come out as an array. And then the client ID would be, null or something else. And you want to add a client ID if the domain/email is being added a client specific. So if you're doing a lead generation campaign, and you do lead gen for a number of clients, then you'd want to specify that this is, the particular client that you are working with when you're building this automation out again. If you're not, then you would just need to leave it as null. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it as null because I'm only doing this for myself. And null in words here isn't going to work, but this version will. So if you go into general functions and click on null, it would work here. And inside of this array, I'm going to delete the domain and I'm going to keep the email only. So inside of this, I'm going to go back in here and then get the email, which we sent the information to. So the lead email is a to email. So we'll click that here. And then this is the client ID. And this is this step done. So we have the endpoint done with our API key inside of it. It's not a post request. I mean, it's not a get request, it's a post request. So we need to change the method to post. Raw, JSON, domain block list, client ID, bang. Sweet. So let's rename this one to add to global block list. Click on OK and then keep it moving. Cool. So that is the do not contact branch complete. Now the next part is the out of office branch. So in this branch, we've correctly determined that the response is out of office. And we also know that they have given us a time upon which they'll be back. So and we can confirm that by going into the message and saying and seeing where that information was. Wait, reply. Yeah, I am out of office until 3rd of August. So what we want to do is we want to get GPT to find out how many days between now and the 3rd of August and pretty much make it so that the campaign will restart for the individual when they get back in office. So the next step for that is then a ChatGPT completion. So we click on create completion, create another completion. I want GPT 4.0 and I want 2 messages again. First one being system and the second one being user. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause this and get the prompts that I had in before. All right, so it's only reply with a whole number. If the answer is a negative number, past 2 is the response. What this is doing is it's reading the response. If the response is mentioning an out of office date, which is in the past, then it's basically going to, because the operation that we're asking to do is to subtract the number of days between now and the date that this individual says that they're back in office. So it's going to be, 3rd of August minus 31st of or 27th of July equals like 6, I believe, or something along those lines, 5 or 6. So if that number is a negative number, then we would want to pass just the number 2, because the likelihood is they have an autoresponder on, and this same autoresponder is basically just on, and it might just be a placeholder for cold emails or something along those lines. So if we find the number of days between now and the date that the individual says that they're back in office, and we give a couple of examples, we'll be able to successfully do this. So let me grab what the example is. So if I grab the text again, reply message text, it says I am out of office until the 3rd of August. So from here, And the way that I've just done this is that you give the example, Q, then A, then you give an example, and then you ask for the answer, and then the answer is going to be what spits out. So if I leave that there, click the max tokens as 0, and then again, I want you to only give me the most high probability tokens and don't venture off and do some creative stuff because I only want a number. That should be complete. And now the next step for that is to do another HTTP request, which is going to make a request, and this request is going to be to resume a lead when they get back from out of office. And for that, we need the resume lead by campaign ID endpoint. So I'm going to, again, copy all of this, go back in here, and under here, I'm going to click raw, JSON, and under here, paste the request content, get rid of the curl, take the URL and put it back up here. And then I'm going to get the body, and I'm going to do two things. First thing I want to do is obviously delete the things that came beforehand, and second thing I want to do is I'm going to delete these really buggy and annoying other versions of quote marks, because these just don't get read by make and it will just error out. So resume lead within delayed days, I want the result. So choices, message, content. I think I can just type in result, can't I? I think result actually pops up, doesn't it, as the answer? Yeah. So I've been wasting all my time this whole time. All right, let me just click this, click on result, and then resume lead with delayed days is this. This should be a post request, and then I'm going to need the campaign ID and the lead ID again. So if I go in here and look for campaign ID, then I can get that from here. And if I go in here and I get the lead ID, I can go back in here and then I can click on this one down here to get the lead ID. And then I need the API key one more time. I realized that I could go back into my Clipboard History Pro, but I have a bunch of other like passwords and stuff in here. So I'm just going to hard copy it every time. API key is this. Is this a post request? Yes, it is. And this is now complete. And what it's going to do now is going to resume the lead in the campaign with the delay in days being the result of the difference in time between now and when they're back in office. So if this is 5 days, for the back in office in 5 days, it will resume the lead in 5 days. We'll click on past response and click yes, and then we'll click OK, and then we'll save this. I actually haven't been saving this, which is an absolute mess. And then from here, we are going to name this resume lead. Sweet. So if I go back in and I test the exact same copy, I'm out of office until 3rd of August, what we should get is the number 5 or 6 or however many days it is from now. And it's giving me a 409 conflict. This is the last sequence. You cannot resume the lead. Okay, so it actually did work. 7 was the result. So what it has done, it has sent input bundles. If I go in here, what it's looking for, so what it's done is it's taken the individual from the campaign, from the lead, it's put the right API, put the right URL in from the Smart Lead API, and the data has said resume lead with delay days 7. So it's actually correct, but the reason why it's giving a 409 is because it's the last sequence. So if this was a 4 or 5 email sequence and I got the out of office on email 1, this would come back as a 200 as opposed to a 400. But because it was only a 1 email campaign, there is no other emails to go out. Therefore, it's going to come back as an error. So this shouldn't stop things, but just in case it does, what we can do is we can add an error handler and click ignore. So what this will do is it will, once it gets that 409, it will just say, all right, is what it is. We won't disrupt you or send you emails that things are broken. So it's going to give me the same 409 error. See, it's giving me that 409 error, data error, ignore. So we're fine here. So this step works as intended. So now we have wrong person, and what we want to do with wrong person is we want to identify if there is an email that is present inside of the wrong person text, and then forward the email chain to the individual that has been put inside of that email. So what we want to do here is we want to get the text parser out again, and then we want to match elements this time because they have inbuilt elements for different types of regular expressions. This one being email, we can ignore special characters in the pattern. and we are going to click on the text, and the text is going to be the reply. Boom. This one right here. We are not going to continue the execution of the route if the module finds no matches, because it means that there is nothing to be passed over. So then we want another HTTP module, and this is going to be a forward response. So if we go back into Smart Leads API, this is the reason why I love Smart Leads so much. You can do all of this stuff. I don't know any other software where you can do all of this stuff, which is in as far as like sending cold emails, etc. A lot of this stuff has been powered by Smart Lead, as you can already see. So let me just grab the response here again. So all of this information is now going to be spat out inside of this raw body type, which is JSON again. Slap the request content in there, remove the curl, take the URL and paste it above. So we now need the campaign ID. So let's go back in here and get the campaign ID, which is this. And then we want to go into here, reply email thread, get the API key and put the API key inside of the step as beforehand. We want to keep it as a post request, raw body type, content type JSON, and then we want to change things around with the body. So we're looking for three things. We're looking for message ID, stats ID, and the 2 emails. So the 2 emails is going to be the match that occurred from this text parser here. The stats ID is going to be something that we grabbed from either the first step or the second step. So the first step here, the webhook in and of itself. And then the message ID is what we're going to grab when we click. If we go all the way back to the webhooks, we should have message ID right down here, message ID. And the 2 emails are going to be whatever the match was. So if I just if I go back into the text parser module, go to match and then click on match in between the space where it says 2 emails, then it should give us the individual email that we want to be forwarding things to. So this is the stats ID and this is the message ID. We want to pass the response, and this should have everything that we would need. So if we click on that and then we run once and we change the text inside of our testing tool to something along the lines of, Jenny no longer works here. For further inquiries, please message Jenny mailinglists@gmail.com. All right, so that's still going. We click on send. And now what it's going to do is it's going to go down the wrong person file, and it's giving us a bad request. So right now it's telling us that the email stats ID is required. So let me double check and see if the stats ID comes out as anything else. Right, so we have that. One sec. Okay, so it looks like the actual URL is forward email instead of reply message chain, which I think is the one that came up here. So what was inside of this request was actually wrong, but what was up here was actually correct. So copying this was the right way to go, because everything was done as correct, and it was saying that there was no stats ID or some other error like that. But, you know, this was the one that was correct, and this is the one that was wrong. So is what it is. We move. The whole idea behind this URL now is to have server.smartly.ai API v1 campaigns campaign ID //email with your API key. And that has given us all of this information here. So we now have completed the wrong person chain. So let me rename this step to forward email. And let me also add a filter here. And this filter is so that this is not equal to this. The reason being, if the first email, if for example the email response wasn't, you know, Sheni no longer works here, for further inquiries please message this. If it was, you know, sheni@leadhawks.co.uk or sheni@mailinglists.sheni@icarusgrowth.com no longer works here, if this had been span out and this was equal to the match, then it would basically send an email to the individual that is no longer there, and we don't want that. We want an email that we want a fresh email, as opposed to the email that was already being sent to that no longer works here. So that is a necessary filter that we need. So I'm going to call that is not matching non-existent. Sweet. So now we can see that here. All right, so we've gotten through all of those. We now need to build meeting request and fallback, and these two are probably the harder ones. So we'll just plug ahead and see what we can get done with all of these. All right, still going strong. So what we need now is we need to fiddle around with Calendly. So we actually want to get an event. And what you want to do is you want to add your connection. That one's not active anymore. Which one do we want? We want this one. And for this one, we can just click on the one that we would want. And let's go for... Oh, wait, this is actually getting an event. We need an event type. Hold on. So let's go back into Calendly and get an event type. Click the right connection. And then from here, we just want to pick from the list. And this is going to be quick chat lead generation. So the difference between quick chat and quick chat lead generation is that the inbox manager, so there's two different copies of the Calendly. The first one is the inbound one, and the second one is the outbound one. The inbound one has a bunch of questions on it and only shows 5 days of availability. The outbound one has 0 questions on it and shows 20 days of delivery of availability. So we want to get the one that has more availability, but either one can be used because you're going to be doing the same thing with both of them. So what we're doing right now is we're getting the event type that we would need, which is this. And then from here, we are going to, let me see if I can just test this real quick. So if I just test it, it's going to give me all the information that we have. All right. So it's giving me the right calendar type. Nice. Now, the next thing that we actually need to do is another GPT module. Now, the reason why I'm doing this GPT module, I'll explain as I'm going along, but I'm just going to copy the prompts that I had from the previous version of this, and I'll just explain what I've put when I've put it there. So let me just copy those in real quickly. And we have them here. So you must respond only with a date. Do not respond with anything other than a date in the exact same date format as the input. If this string is not a valid date, round it to the nearest whole minute. If it is, return the exact input as is. The reason why I'm doing this is because and let me just put max tokens as 0. The reason why I'm doing this is because the next step that needs to occur is we need to list the available times on the calendar that we've specified in the list event, in the list calendar step here, or get calendar step here. Now, the reason why we need to do that is because for some reason, and I do not know why this is the case, but make spits out, so the now timestamp, which is this right here, will sometimes spit out a time which is not a correct time. And by that, I mean it will say 27th of July, 2024, 4:57 p.m., 38 seconds. Cool. That sounds fine, right? Well, because it's Z time format, it will be 27th of July, 2024, 4:57, 38 seconds, point so and so milliseconds. The problem that has been happening when doing this is that sometimes the number of seconds that appears in this timestamp goes above 60 or goes above 59, which means that it's an invalid date and it's not read by Calendly, which is the reason why we're doing this inside of GPT right now. So it will say, if this string is not a valid date, round it to the nearest whole minute. If it is, return the exact input. The problem with, I can't even use, and again, this may be me just being stupid, who knows. I can't even use the set hour or set second module here, which will just set it so that it will give me the timestamp and then spit out the number of seconds, because it will still read the timestamp as something that isn't a valid date. So if we do this and click on now, it should be fine. And if we then press go, So GPT can be used for this. We could also set a variable, and that variable could also just be the amount of time plus with the seconds just set to a time that actually makes sense. So there are a couple of fixes for it. I've decided to use GPT for it because it's just not failed me yet. So what we're going to do now is basically just have this go through. This will give us a valid date irrespective of what happens. We also want only the date, which is the reason why we've put the temperature in the top P down to 0.1. And if we click run this module only, you may be able to see what happens. So 27th of July 2024 7:34 is the result. The message that went in was this: 2024 07 21 T 1834 21 692Z. All right. So, wait, did it do it just now? I think it might have as well. 3421. So it didn't do it this time, but we're fixing it if it happens again anyways. So we'll just put fixed times here. And then that is the first half of this put in. We now need to add a Calendly API call. And for that, we need to go into Calendly's API. So if we click on Calendly API inside of Google, go to the API reference. The endpoint that we want is list event type available times. So if we go into event types and then we go list event type available times, we have this information here. So this is the endpoint. And because we're using the embedded Calendly module that Make provides, all we need to type in is the / event type available times. And this is a GET request, so the request is correct, and it's still JSON. And then we need to add a number of query strings. We need to add an end time, a start time, and an event type. So we are going to add 3 query strings right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and then just put these in. So the first one I know is going to be event_type. And it's going to be the URI that came out of the Calendly step, which is this one here. URI. This is the api.calendly.com link. The next one's going to be start time. And the one after that is going to be end time. So I'm just going to grab these real quick. Okay, so from here, what we want is the result, and we want to add some time to this result. The reason being is we want to have this. So basically, the way that it works is that the time that is spit out by the timestamp gets triggered back here. By the time it gets to here, there is a time lapse. It may be 20 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it may be. Because there is a time lapse, if you use a now timestamp, it's actually a time in the past. What this endpoint does is it looks for the date range, which is no greater than 1 week. And that needs to be within now and it needs to be a valid set of dates that are in the future. So because of that time lag, if you just put now as the timestamp in here, or just this result, then what's going to happen is it's going to error out and say this is invalid because of ABCDE reason. This is not a valid date. Please put a valid date range in here. So we're going to add hours. We're not going to add too many hours. We'll probably just add 1 or 2. So we'll take, so to this time, please add 2 hours. Sweet. And then what we want to do is we want to format this entire thing. So format date, add hours to, : Now we want the format. And the format is this: YYYY-MM-DD-THH:MM:SS.SSSSS. And the reason why is because it accepts this type of time. YYYY-month-date T hour minute second 0.000000Z. So it's looking for the Z code or Z time format basically. So we leave that there, and then the next step from there is to put in GMT, which is just going to be, universal time. So we have the start time. We now need the end time, and the end time is going to be days, not hours. So add days, and it's not going to be 2 days, it's going to be 6. So now we have a bracket of time which starts from 2 hours, from now and ends at 6 days from now. So now we have the complete event type available times part. So let me just rename this to list event type available times. Click OK, and then I'm going to click on run once, and then I'm going to change the text in here. I'm going to say, can you tell me when's best for a quick chat? I'm available on Monday. And what this should do, hopefully it works. What it should do is it should read that it is a meeting request and then list the available times. And it's given us 200, and it's given us 15 available times. We have a ton of times set out in a bunch of collections. Great. So we have 10:30, 10:15, 10 o'clock, XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. Perfect. So what we want to do now is we want to use GPT to turn that into a set list of information that is going to give us the correct, format, or it's just going to give us a readable version of that. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to create 2 more messages, and then one of them being a system, the other one being a user. And then we're going to go into message content and then add the 2 prompts. So I've got the prompts in here. Your task is to convert the following list of times in Z format into a series of time ranges separated by bullet points. Provide both Europe, London, and EST times. Great. So convert these times into 3 distinct dates and time ranges. And the reason why we want 3 is because we don't want to overload the individual that we are responding to. So I need the set of dates, and it's going to be all of the start times. So I need another map, and it's going to look for, within this collection, get me start time. Start_time. So within this collection of dates, please give me all of the times. And from here, max tokens again is going to be 0. And then we're going to put the temperature out to 0.1, the top P again to 0.1. Click OK. And we're going to run this. So we'll do this, and then we'll see how the output looks. It's getting our prompts. It's marking it as a meeting request. Listing the available times, and then it is spitting out from this message here, which is all of these times, spitting all of these out, and it's giving us the 3 distinct date and time ranges of both Europe, London, and EST times formatted as requested. Europe, London, Monday 29th, 11 till 11:30, Tuesday 30th, 11 till 1, 3 to 3:30, Monday 29th, 6 till 6 a.m., 6 till 8 a.m., 10 to 10:30. Great. So it's given us that output. We now need to pass that output over to Slack into the Inbox Manager chat, and then basically tell them to go and respond to the individual inside of the master inbox. So the next step is going to be Slack. And for that, we want to send a message, create a message. And here we want to pick the channel that we want to work in. Okay, so the channel that we're going to work on for this is just called Icarus Growth Replies. I'm going to add myself to this, and then we'll change this when we get the bot involved. But I just want to get this all in here. So I'm going to select from the list, and the channel is, in fact, I can't be bothered to do that. Let me just enter this manually. Let me grab the URL, let me grab the ID from here. So if we go back into Slack, click on the name, scroll all the way down, we'll see the channel ID right at the bottom. We can just copy and paste that straight in. And that is giving us the channel ID/name. And from here, we just need to build out the text. And the text is going to be, so-and-so has just requested a meeting. Here are the available times. This is the information about the person. Reply to them here. So it's going to say something along the lines of, first name, last name. So if we go into fetch lead and we get first name, last name has just put in a meeting request, and we'll put a little eyes there, which is the emoji for eyes. And then we can put in under here, company name is this, website is this, available times, and then we'll go back into the GPT and then we'll click on the result. And then after that, we will tag the individual inbox manager and then tell them in bold, send them the available times here. Now here is also going to be a link of some sorts. So we're going to basically put these arrow marks around here, and right before the H, we're going to add this line, and then we're going to put a link here. And this link is going to be the master inbox link that gets spit out right at the start of the whole automation, and it's called UI master inbox link. So we'll click on that, and then that is giving us a hyperlink, which we can then click to, which will take us straight to the inbox. So I want to put an individual here. So let me grab my own ID. And that ID is, if you click on my name and then you go to the three dots, copy member ID, and then we go back into new reply, and we can take that new reply, we can take that ID and we can paste it right after the @ symbol, and that will give us everything that we need. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit more with a little bit more, you know, markdown. So we have my name in in bold, company name we'll put in bold. So company name, websites in bold, available times are in bold as well. Sweet. And for that, we can just click OK. And then what I'm also going to add is another Slack message, which is going to have the text in the inside of the thread. So I'm going to get the ID again. Oh, I'm going to get the ID from here. And then I'm going to paste that up here. And I'm going to get the text, and that text is just going to be the reply. So if I get the reply message text, click that here. And then right above that, I'll just click reply. And then inside of show advanced settings, I'm going to go to thread message ID, and then I'm going to click timestamp. And then this is not going to be a broadcast. It's not going to link names. We're not going to pass the message text. We're using markdowns. We can leave these as empty, and then we'll just put a new reply here. So icon emoji we'll leave alone. We'll just put new reply as the user name. And this is only in effect when a bot connection is put in place, but we are going to use a bot in this instance as well. So let me actually grab the icon emoji for email as well. So for that, I can go to emoji dev. I think it's emojibase.dev. Slack emoji codes emoji dev. Or it's emoji base, I think it's called. Emojibase.dev. Short codes. Sweet. So let's make this look pretty and then type in the email. Sweet. So now I can go in here, just copy this :e-mail, and I can stick that inside of icon emoji. And now whenever whenever the message comes through and it's going to be a bot, it will just give me the emoji here. And for meeting request, I'm also going to add the name of meeting request. I'm going to add icon emoji of a phone. And let's just take the telephone. We'll take the IamCal Slack. We'll take telephone one. And then we'll put that inside of the icon emoji here. Cool. So now we have the reply. We have the timestamp of the reply. We have the individual message that gets sent when someone puts in a meeting request. And we have a response here. I'm also going to add an error handler here, because sometimes Smartly doesn't pick up the reply text. Very, very, very occasionally. Sometimes the reply text just ends up blank. So if it is blank, I don't want this whole thing to shut down. So I'm just putting an ignore button there. So if we run this one more time, we can get an idea of what happens. Can you tell me when's best for a quick chat? I'm available on Monday. Send. Now that we've sent it, it's going to go through, get the prompts, categorize it, get the calendar, list the times, go through GPT, and then it's going to spit out a message, and this message looks like the following. Just put in a meeting request, company names this, website's this, available times. Here are the 3 distinct dates and time ranges, and both. I need to change that. I think it's going to give me, it's just annoying me seeing that. Monday 29th of July, 11 till 1. Tuesday 30th of July, 11 till 1, and then 3 till 3:30. And then in EST time, the exact same as well. Send them available times here. And if I click here, it's going to take me straight to the master inbox where the individual lead is marked as meeting request. So yeah, that works absolutely fine. So we have basically every single part of this is now done. The final step is to now do the fallbacks. And the fallbacks will start with these 2 messages. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the messages and then we're going to paste them down here so that we can configure them for what they would originally be. So I can just delete this and it should keep the fact that it's a fallback route. Let me auto align and then go here. Yep, it's still saying fallback, so we're all good there. And now we need to change this text. So this is just the individual who is sending a reply. Go into the master inbox to check. What's also going to happen is it's also going to give us the text, and then what we would need is the button, and that button is going to say, does this person meet criteria? Yes or no? And the yes is going to trigger a workflow and close, and the no is going to mark them as unqualified and send that message back that says this person should not be reached out to again. So what we do now is we keep these the same, and then we just change the text here. So they're not putting in they didn't put in a meeting request. What they did do is they replied to a campaign. So let's specify the campaign by going back into the webhooks part and then calling it, and then calling the campaign tag, the campaign name. So it's now saying first name, last name, just replied to the campaign name campaign. We'll keep company name. In fact, let me add the email in brackets as well. So and so email. So where's the 2 emails? Right here. So it's first name, last name, in brackets email, just replied to the campaign name campaign. Website can stay there, and then we'll add reply in thread. Instead of sending the available times, it's look at the reply in the thread and determine the next action. And what we'll do on top of that is we'll say master inbox link is here. So what we're doing is we're tagging the individual who is the inbox manager. We're saying look at the reply in the thread and determine the next action. Master inbox link is here. So they have a link to the individual prospects. If the individual is qualified, they can just click on that and go straight into Smart Lead. If the individual isn't qualified, then they would mark that as and when. So let's go back in here. Let's remove meeting request and turn it into new reply under the username. And then let's also go back into the emoji base, and then we'll grab another type of email. We'll call this incoming. Envelope with arrow. We'll just take this one. And then we'll use that as the icon emoji for this part here. We now have a complete message for all of the fallbacks. So-and-so just replied to the blank campaign. Website is this. Replies in the thread. Look at the reply in the thread and determine the next action. The master inbox link is here. Sweet. So that's done. We now need to put in here what the reply is. This is the name of the reply. This can actually all stay the same. Now we need a third message, and this is another Slack message. So I'm going to copy this here and paste this here, and this is going to be our blocks. So we'll remove the text, and then we'll take the timestamp and we'll make it the timestamp for not module 30, which was the first message. It's module 31, which was the message which is inside the thread. So this will now appear underneath the previous message. And we'll call the name of this bot qualified ? And then we'll get another emoji code and we'll call it, it's called thinking face. So we'll just call it thinking face. And then from here, we will leave it. And now what we need to do is we need to create a bot. So what we need to do now is we need to go to api.slack.com/apps. And this is going to take you to all of your apps. If you have none here, it will just say create new app. But what we're going to do is create a new one, and we're going to call this, I'm going to do this from scratch and call it the email automations test. And then we'll develop it inside of this workspace, create the app, and then we'll move from here. So we need to, first of all, give it a few permissions. The permissions that we need to give it, if we just go all the way down to scopes, are going to be all of the channel ones, or most of them. So we have channels join, channels manage, channels read, channels, we will keep channels history as well. Then we need groups. So groups history, groups read, groups write. I don't think there's anything else for groups. We'll put groups write invites in there as well. And then we need ones for chat. So we need chat write and chat write public. Cool. So we have a bunch of scopes. So that's the first step. The second step is to get redirect URLs in. And the redirect URL that we need is this one here. It's the one that Integromat gives you when you want to use OAuth for Slack. So it's exactly this. So just copy and paste this and then click add. And then click save. And then what this has now allowed us to do is it's now basically allowed us to determine that when we want to use this bot can do all of these things. And if you want to use this bot inside of Integromat, you need to visit this URL so that you can accept these scopes. So that's basically what's being done. So we then need to get OAuth tokens for the workspace. So we need to install it to the workspace. And it's going to pop up with this right here. And we'll just click allow. And then that's going to give us an OAuth token for the workspace. And then we need to add a couple other things. So the first one that we're going to add is interactivity and shortcuts. So if we tick on, we now need a URL. And that URL is going to be the second automation that we showed right at the start of the individual steps. So I'm just going to duplicate this and then go back and create another fresh automation. Cool. So we got another fresh automation. This is qualified reply test. And this is just another custom webhook. And this one is going to be a new one. And we're going to call it qualified replies test. Click save and then copy this address to the clipboard and then go back into api.slack.com and stick it under request URLs. Sweet. So now we have that. We can click save changes. We now need incoming webhooks. So if we turn this one on, we can now add a new webhook to the workspace, and this webhook will be what we would call whenever we want to make changes to specific channels and stuff. So if we'll just add a new webhook, and what this is going to do is it's going to require a channel to post to as an app. So what this is doing is it's just adding the app to the workspace. So I'm just going to put the same equals growth replies down here, click allow. And now we have a webhook URL that we can use, which will post to channel. So we have the things that we would need. Let's now go back in and then create the buttons and create the blocks. All right, so let's go into api.slack.com again. In fact, let's just type in block kit builder Slack inside of Google. It's going to give us block kit, and then we need to build and prototype visually. So we'll go in here and it's going to take us to the block kit builder. Cool. So we want to get rid of all of this nonsense. And what we're going to do is actually use a different template. So we're going to use an approval template. Let's use this one. We don't need this text. We don't need this text. What we do want is a markdown block. And this markdown block is going to be very simple. All you would need to do is go into the payload and then change the text to say what you want it to say. So this is going to be a simple, is this lead qualified ? With a little bit of italics. And then we want to look at the approve and deny buttons. So we have approve here, which is the text for this button here. And then we have deny, which is the text for this button here. So we want to change this to qualified and this to unqualified. And then you can see that the value here is click me 123 and the value here is click me 123. I'm going to put a placeholder email in here, because what this will do is it will allow us to send. This is the one part of the entire payload that we can use in further automations. So we need an email here, because what we're going to do is we're going to, in the next automation, find the individual in Smart Lead and then change them around and move things around. And we're also going to find the individual, make sure that they don't already exist in close. And if they do, we set the task. If they don't, we create the individual and then set the task. So this here is literally all we would need. So if we just copy that payload, we can go back into this individual step, and then under blocks we paste, and then where the values were the emails, we just go back in and then we find the email from the initial step, which was the webhook step. So if I scroll back down again, and then I get the to email, and then I put this one in here as well. We now have the buttons that should send whenever we want to use this individual, whenever we want to put this bot to action. But before we do that, we actually need to add the bot to our Slack workspace and to the individual place that they're going to be used. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into our actual Slack channel. And as you can see, so-and-so added an integration to this channel, email automation test. What we want to do as well, we want to at it, and we want to actually tag it and bring it into the channel. So and then we click send. We want to invite them to the channel. So now it was added to Icarus Growth Replies by me. So we now go in to make. And the first thing we need to do is switch out the connection and make it so that it's not me sending this, it's the bot that we've just made sending this message. So connection type, Slack bot, connection name, email automation test. We'll skip additional scopes and then we'll show advanced settings. So we now need the client ID and the client secret that came from the home page of the individual app that we created. So if I go into basic information, I should be able to get both of those there. So this is the client ID. Copy that and paste that in here. And then the client secret, we'll show it, copy it, and then paste it here. And what should happen here is that it should it should open up the new module with the same so-and-so is requesting access to Integram app, which is exactly what we have here. So let me just go back, and it's saying so-and-so is requesting permission to access to LeadHawk Slack workspace. What will it be able to view? Content and info. What will it be able to do? Perform actions in channels and conversations, such as send messages to channels and send messages with a customized username and avatar. So we click allow. And now what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to use this inside of Make. So if I now, having put all of this to work, send off an example using this same rec bin, and instead of doing this, I ask, for example, what's the price? I'll click run once, click send. It's going to go through all of these. It's going to go through the fallback, and then it should send the message inside of the thread. So we have in here, just reply to the test campaign, reply automation campaign. This is the website, reply in thread. Look at the reply and determine the next action. Master inbox link is here. Is this lead qualified? This is the reply. And then it's saying in the Slack bot, I didn't unfurl this because it was already shared in the channel quite recently and I didn't want to clock things up. All right, do nothing. I don't want that showing up all over the place, so I'll have to change that later. But we now have this button here. Is this lead qualified? Qualified or unqualified? Great. So coming in, everything is working. We now need to make it so that everything works when going out. So we have this whole automation is basically done. Now, the one thing that I want to add here on this second step is this same ignore, because again, if there is no reply text, if I click ignore, if I don't get reply text, it will just error out. So I want to click and ignore. So I'm going to add another error handler, which is going to be down here, which is going to be the same thing. And also what I want to do is I want to add an error handler for the first OpenAI instance, because there will be times where GPT is just down, or there's an error with your API key or whatever it may be. So inside of the error handler, what I'm going to do is add a router, and then I'm going to take this router, delete this first step, and then I'm going to copy all four of these steps and paste them back here so that I can link them just like this. I'll delete this part here, and now we have the fallback route coming into effect whenever GPT just fails on us. So this is the complete automation for this alert, push, and test. We now just need to figure out the final part, which is what happens when we press these buttons. So this is where we need to go into this webhook automation, which is the qualified reply workflow. And then we want to actually run this one. So let's click on the run once button and let's grab the link again and just push qualified and see what happens. Cool. So we've got a payload, and this payload is a bunch of stuff, including a couple values. Now we can't make sense of this, but there's no pass response button on a webhook the same way that there is on a HTTP request. So what we're going to do is go into type pass JSON, and this is going to add a module which is going to allow us to pass this exact same payload. And what we're going to want here as well is we're going to go into flow control, add a router, and then we're going to create two different responses. One for when the label is qualified and one for when the label is unqualified. So we're going to put qualified on the top route, leave that for now. And then we're going to put unqualified in the bottom route and then leave that for now. Click save. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on qualified, and then this will give us existing data that we can use. So if I click existing data, we get the thing that was pressed, and then we can pass it out, and then it will give us what the action was. And the action was qualified. And this is the value. And the value is the individual email that was sent through. Now, just so that I am 100% certain, the individual that came through was actually this email. Great. So we have everything that we need in order to create the second part, which is going to manage when people are qualified and when they're not qualified. So now we need to alert the channel once an individual button is pressed, because if I press this button and nothing happens, it's going to get pressed again, which means it's going to do things that it doesn't need to be doing right now. So what I'm going to do is we basically need to create a response to that individual message. Cool. So now we want to add two different Slack messages. So the first one is going to be for qualified. The second one's going to be for unqualified. So we're going to take the exact same bot, email automations test. We're going to enter the channel ID manually. So let me go back in here, grab the channel ID by clicking at the top and then clicking on channel ID over here. And then we're going to paste the channel ID in here. And then we need some text, and the text is going to be a tag to the individual, which is me, and we're going to copy my member ID and then tag me in the button that was pressed. So if I go here at my name, marked as qualified, check close for further actions. Sweet. So now we can confirm that the individual is qualified. So we need, but what we need to do is we need to put it inside of the thread so that everything is contained in the way that it should be. So I need the message timestamp, which is this one right here. Message, in fact, let me just type in TS and see which one comes up. I need the earliest one. So the earliest one would be, okay, so these are actually the same thing. So yeah, these two are the same thing. So we'll use container message timestamp. Now we then don't want to broadcast it. We want to link names. We don't want to pass the message text. We want to use markdown. And we also don't want to unfurl any text or media content. The icon emoji we want here is the white check mark, which is going to be this. So we'll go back into the automation and then add the icon emoji, and then the username is going to be qualified exclamation mark. Sweet. So now whenever an individual is marked as qualified, they will get a message back immediately which will say the individual is qualified. So let me just copy and paste the exact same steps down here under unqualified, and we'll just put unqualified in the text. So and so marked as unqualified. We'll just call it prospect marked as unqualified. And then what we need to do is we need to basically say that Smart Lead is undergoing changes. So we'll say lead categories being updated in Smart Lead. Okay, so now we need to get the X mark. I think it is literally just an X. So if I just put in, I'll put in cross. Sweet, so the cross mark is called X. So I'll grab that from here. And then I'll stick that inside of the icon emoji mark so that we know for certain this individual is not qualified. So we'll put unqualified as the name, and then this will give us confirmation that the individual is either qualified or unqualified. I'm going to change the names of these filters because the bottom one was unqualified and the top one was qualified. We also need to start filtering. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the text from the message, from the action, and then confirm that it is equal to or contains, sorry, not contains, starts with qualified or quali. And then for the unqualified step, we will take the exact same action text handler and we'll say that it starts with, and then we'll click unqualified or unqual. So now we have it set so that whenever somebody presses the button, it will send a message which says they are qualified, or it will send a message that says they are unqualified. So if I run using existing data, it's gone through the qualified step, which has now sent off a response with a check mark saying marked as qualified, check closed for further actions. So let me just change this to prospect marked as qualified. So now what we need to do is we need to create the two flows. So the first flow that I'm going to make is for the unqualified prospect, which is going to be a fetch lead response from Smart Lead. So the first step is going to be HTTP. So we'll make the request, and this request is going to be fetch lead. So I'll scroll up to the top. Fetch lead by email address. And then I'm going to copy the request again, and we're going to paste the URL up here, remove the curl, and then we're going to add our API key, and we're going to add the email that came from the response that JSON picked up. So we'll add the email first, and that response, if I just type in the search bar @ it should give us the email under actions, and actions value equals this. And the API key will be found inside of Smart Lead. So if we go back into Smart Lead and copy the API key, go back into make, and then paste the API key here, we now have the complete response. So we close that and we rename it to fetch lead. We now then need to fetch the lead categories. So it's going to be the same steps from before. We'll make a request, and then we'll go back in here, and then we'll get the lead categories. So we'll fetch the lead categories, and we'll again copy the request, go back into here, paste the URL in, remove the curl at the front, fetch the categories, paste the API key in from Smart Lead. So if we go back into Smart Lead, click on copy, and then click paste. We have the API key. Again, it's a get request. We need to pass this response, and we also need to pass the fetch lead response as well. We'll rename this to fetch lead categories. And then we need to change the lead category again. So the fact that I did this manually is very dumb when I have this right in front of me here. So let me go in and copy one of these lead category modules and then paste it in here. So this one here, if we remove the filters because it came from something that had filters, we can go back in, and then instead of going in to here and using dead links, what we're going to do is we're going to get the campaign ID from the fetch lead step and the email ID, lead ID from the fetch lead step. And then the category ID is going to come from the fetch lead category ID step as well. So I need to run this again, and I'm going to run this by clicking on the unqualified step. And that's now giving me prospect marked as unqualified, lead categories being updated in Smart Lead, which should error out, but is also going to give us the information that we would need. So if we go into this part here and we fetch the campaign ID, we should be able to get it. If I just type in campaign ID is right here. And then if we get the lead ID, we'll type in lead in the search bar and see what came up, or we'll just type in ID. So fetch lead category ID. So this one here. So we go into the double marks here. We'll click on data ID. That's now giving us that information. And now we need the category ID. And the category ID is going to come from the data tab, which is under here, and which is under fetch lead categories. And we want the ID where the name equals unqualified. So we'll change this to unqualified. And that should effectively have given us the correct unqualified setup. So if I go back into here, into the master inbox, it's set to meeting request right now. If I click on the button inside of here and mark them as unqualified, it will tell me that the prospect was marked as unqualified. It will run through the rest of this information, and then if I refresh the page, it should mark them as unqualified. So that step is fully fleshed out. Everything is done in there. We now need to do what we need to do with the individual that is qualified. So the first step here is to actually fetch the lead again. So this information is going to stay. And then once we fetched the lead, we then need to go and find an individual inside of Close. So the first thing we need to do is create a new module and open up Close CRM, search leads. So pick the right connection as well if you have multiple connections. And then we have a bunch of stuff here. So the filtering queries inside of Close are specific to Close in and of itself. So if I open up close.com/leads, we'll have inside of here all of the leads that are inside of the CRM. What we need is a filtering query. So we need to build a set of filters, and then copy the filters and put them into our scenario. So if I add filter leads, and then I click on name contains exact words, I'll just put my email in, it's now spitting out one lead. What I need to do with this information is I need to go to the three dots, copy the filters, and then paste this back into the scenario. So if I go here, paste it under filter and query, I now need to just find the value. And the value here is the email. And this is the email that we are using, which came from either of the steps, really. So we can use the first step, or we can use the second step. Now, I would rather use the second step, but it looks like because I haven't run it, I'll have to run it first. So I can't be bothered. So I'm just going to put that where we need to put it. And that is right here underneath inside of these brackets. So this JSON query, which was built out inside of close, has correctly identified the individual. And this individual is, and the only thing that we're doing here is we're just finding the leads, matching all of the criteria, where the first and only criteria is name equals exactly this. And the reason why I've set it to that is because for my leads, the name of the lead is first name, last name, dash company name, dash email, dash phone number if it's available. And the contacts sit within the leads. So that's kind of the hierarchy that we have set up inside of our closed CRMs. And we've had this for the longest. Leads goes above contacts. So we could have 100 leads and 250 contacts because we have multiple contacts within a lead. And that's the reason why we're doing it as we're doing it. So we can just use name to find the leads and build the rest of this automation out. And now that we have this sorted, if I click on here and I make a request again, and this request is instead of unqualified, qualified, it'll pop up with prospect marked as qualified, check close for further actions. And what it is doing is it's fetching the lead, which is then spat out all of my information here. And then it has found the lead that was inside of close. And from here, we have a lot of stuff that we can play around with. So we need to build the very final part of this entire automation, which is to create the task. Now, the task that needs to be created will either be created before the lead exists, when the lead exists, or after the lead is created. So I'm going to set up the filters here and make it so that the total number of bundles is not equal to 1 if they're found. And I'm going to make the total number of bundles equal to not found if they equal 0. So if the total number of bundles is equal to 0, then it means that they weren't found. But if the total number of bundles is not equal to 0, then it means that they were found. So now, if they're found, we just create the task. If they're not found, we create the lead and then we create the task. And the good thing about creating a lead is that you can create the contacts within the lead that you've created. So if we go into Close CRM and create the lead as another module, click the right connection, we now need to type in the name. And the name is going to be a combination of first name, last name, company name, email, as we said. So first name, space, last name, space, dash, company name, dash, email, dash, phone number. And if the phone number is blank, it is what it is. And then the URL is going to be the website. The contacts, well, the first name is going to be the individual that we have just highlighted. So first name, last name. Under custom fields, there should be job title. I don't think I put this in there when I did this. Yeah, it didn't come out when I did this. So you would ordinarily put the job title, which comes from the smart lead import when you do the individual campaign, but we'll leave that blank. And then emails, we want the office email, and that email equals the email that we've been sending to. And if there's a phone number, we'll just put, mobile, and then we'll put phone number down here. And from there, that means we have the entire lead and the contact colon, that contacts that sit within the lead in and of itself. So that can be left there. So we've now created the lead. The next part is we want to create a task. So if we create the task, the task is for the lead ID that was found in the created lead step right here. And then the text is call first name, last name first name, last name on phone number and add to Blitzkrieg workflow. And this is a lead, and we'll just assign it to myself. And then the date for this we can set to, because we want speed with this, we'll set it to now plus 1 hour. So if we click on the date and time functions, when we click in here and we click add hours, go into the first part of the close bracket, click on now, and then the second part of the close bracket, click on 1, we'll have, you know, now plus 1 hour. And then is complete, we'll set to no, and then we'll click OK. And because we've added hours here, we actually don't want date, we want date time. So date time is going to use the account's time zone, and the date will ignore any time in the time zone. So we now have the actual time that we need. This task is going to be exactly the same for this step here, except we want the lead ID from the search leads part because an individual was found. So if we go back into lead ID for number 10, we type that in there. We will have all of the information that we would need there. But what we also want to do is we want to make sure that we're only finding one person when we search for the lead. So if we search for the lead, we find only one lead. We can do that by going down to limit and then turning the 10 into a 1. And now we should have absolutely everything that we would need. So now if I run this one more time and then I click on either button, we should get a list of things happening. So if I click on unqualified, this individual, I have now been given the message, prospect marked as unqualified, lead categories being updated in smart lead, and they are now marked as unqualified. So that's gone through here. If I mark it as qualified by going in here and typing unqualified, it's going to spit out prospect marked as qualified, and it's going to go through here. It's going to fetch the lead, go into the CRM, and then because they were found, it's going to create a task, and that's going to appear inside of the inbox right underneath tasks. So right here, this is the task. Call so-and-so on and add to Blitzkrieg workflow. And the reason why that has come out as blank is because there's no phone number that was imported into the campaign. And the best thing about this is that you could literally go in here and you could call them if there is a phone number associated with the lead. And that is the entire process from soup to nuts. So if you are looking for something if you're basically looking for something similar, then there should be a link somewhere for you to click on. But just to kind of summarize on the entire process, we have the webhooks, which are coming from Smart Lead. Whenever any single individual responds to the campaign, we fetch the lead, we get the categories out, we then get our massive list of prompts, which gives us a system and a user prompt, which can be actively manipulated over the phone if I'm not around, if I find a poorly categorized response. We then go into the text parser. We get the array, which is basically giving us the response handler system and response handler user prompts. We then push it through our rough sentiment analyzer. And that sentiment analyzer is splitting it into the individual individual lead categories that we would need to pay attention to. And from there, it's also going to give us a bunch of fallbacks. And in the side of the fallbacks, we're getting the response, we're getting the reply, and we're also getting a button which says, is this individual worth following up with or not? If they are worth following up with, then we can send them to close to do further messaging. If they aren't worth following up with, then we can push them out of the inbox and completely ignore them anyways. So this is the system in its entirety, and there are a ton of other ways that the system can be manipulated. It might not be closed, it might be HubSpot, it might not be Smart Lead, it might be Instantly. To my understanding, I don't think every single aspect of what we've done today can be done inside of Instantly, which is the reason why Smart Lead is for me the best. But yeah, that basically covers absolutely everything. So hopefully you're able to follow along and build this out for yourself.